help you understand a little bit about deaf culture and deaf history through a timeline. Well, I have to admit that I'm not very computer savvy, so I'm going to host a little informational session about what I know about deaf culture. And since sign language is my native language, I think that it's going to be a lot of fun for the both of us. So let's get started. Did you know that the deaf culture actually started in the BC area? Huh, I would have never thought about that. I always thought that was more of a recent issue, but what do I know? I'm just a hand, right? So, it started at 1000 BC, and what happened is what all the deaf people had many trouble obtaining property. Actually, they weren't even allowed to have any. There were special laws concerning marriage, and they were established for deaf mutes, but the deaf mutes were also not allowed to be witnesses in court. Well, today I'm sure that many people didn't want to do jury duty, but back then I guess it was a big deal called discrimination. But, of course, we learn about that now, but not back then. Later on, in 384 and 322 BC, ancient Greeks actually denied deaf education. And I don't know if you know about this person, but a little known man named Aristotle had a quote that says, "Deaf people could not be educated since without hearing, people could not learn." Well, I'm pretty sure that I don't have ears and I learned how to talk. So much for Aristotle. And in keeping this in mind, with all of his thinking about that, he actually influenced a king of Lydia to not recognize his deaf son as an heir. It's like, oops, I guess you're my son until you can't hear anymore. So let's all be excited about that. In 345 AD to 550 AD, Christians see deafness as an actual sin. Now, this can cause trouble because with the sinning of their parents, they actually believed that their children were deaf because of their former actions. So, meanwhile, while they were thinking about this, monks actually took vows of silence to better honor God. To communicate necessary information, they developed their own form of sign language. This actually can help them to learn to say, oh, well, you know what? Hi, how you doing? Oh, but I can't talk to you. So they went, just kidding. Well, they had, I'm sure it was a little more advanced than that. But then again, who knows? So let's go on a little bit further to the 1500s. And yes, I did say the 1500s, and that was just a mere 1,000 and so years after this happened. This is when deaf education actually develops. The experimentation through the Renaissance Europe sets the stage for the first attempts at educating the deaf. Girolamo Cardano, what a name, right, of Padua, Italy, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he attempts to teach his deaf son using a code of symbols. Now, I assume that this is a form of sign language also, so good for him is doing that. But he wanted to prove that his deaf son could be taught. Meanwhile, Pedro Ponce de Leon, a monk, successfully teaches speech to people deaf since birth. Now, this means that they have not heard a single word spoken throughout their entire lifetime. But both of these guys did not leave much of a legacy, so this period has Juan Pablo Bonet, an activist of early sign language, to write a first well-known book of the manual alphabetical signs in the deaf, and this happened in 1620. Moving right along, in 1690 through the 1880, deaf culture is in Martha's Vineyard. And if you didn't know this, Martha's Vineyard's in Massachusetts, and many of the families had a lot of hearing problems. And in some villages, even 25% of the residents were deaf. So the